which we'll get into King David in this book, 1 Samuel. So, it's important to mention how everything is coming together and how we're seeing the deception, or I should say the disobeying of the Hebrews as far as the Hebrew law, and it's coming to this point. So we basically have Hannah. Hannah basically gives birth to Samuel. Samuel is basically, given to Eli to be raised as a Nazarite, like Samson was. Remember, a Nazarite cannot, drink or eat, unclean food or shave. So the whole thing was Eli had 2 sons. Now, it's a shortage at this time of priests. So, Eli's sons was basically in line to be priests, but they was out there disobeying God and breaking the laws and what have you. So Eli took in Samuel to basically raise him because he was basically needed during this time. Remember, often Judges with basically everybody doing their own thing and people basically, deciding for themselves what they believe is right and what have you. So you had this time where Samuel basically being raised up to become a priest. And, the Hebrews found themselves again, basically at the mercy or being conquered by the Philistines. Remember, when it ends off, you have Samson. He basically kills a bunch of the Philistines, but it doesn't kill them all. So the Philistines basically come back up and are still ruling Israel. So you have the Philistines, in power. You have the Hebrews trying to get out of, the whole thing, the whole situation at the end. So they basically go up and they try to go to war with the Philistines. So the Philistines, they beat them. They conquered them because, again, the Hebrews have disobeyed and they don't have the power with them, as far as God helping them out. So what happens eventually is the Philistines basically, defeat the Hebrews in a war. And during that war, Eli's 2 sons are killed and the Philistines steal the Ark of the Covenant. Now, after Eli basically hears that his 2 sons have been killed and the Ark of the Covenant has been stolen and taken by the Philistine, he falls out of his chair. He dies. He's like 98 years old. So, he dies. He falls out of his chair. And eventually the Ark of the Covenant will be returned to the Hebrews because the Philistines start getting all kinds of diseases and sickness or what have you. And they attributed that to some kind of curse of the Ark of the Covenant, so they basically give it back. So that basically kind of sums up the beginning of 1 Samuel, what's taking place. Him being basically given to Eli to be taught as a priest and to basically help him out because his sons are basically sinning. So Eli, instills a lot of the, beliefs within him as far as the Nazarite beliefs. And, the Hebrews are still trying to come out of captivity and they fighting, but they're not winning because they're not, holy no more. Ark of the Covenant is stolen, and it's almost as if, it's a sign for the Hebrews to wake up. And they try to. So you have this happen. And then, after it happens, basically the Hebrews look to Samuel, as the judge or the deliverer now. And says to Samuel, we need you to basically appoint us a king. They understand that all other civilizations have kings, and it seems like, everything is going right. But Samuel is basically trying to tell them and warn them that it's not cool to have a king. These are the type of things that can happen. So we're going to start at 1 Samuel chapter 8. Let's go here to start at 7. It says, And the Lord said unto Samuel, Hearken unto the voice of the people, and all that they say unto thee, for they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. So basically you have to understand that this is like one of the biggest spits in the face to God. It's like, I gave y'all a way for y'all to exist outside of all the bull crap that all other people is basically going through, basically being robbed by their kings or what have you. But Samuel was looking at it as if, one, okay, everybody else became judges and deliverers for Israel, and eventually would, rule the people and, guide the people into the ways of, the religion or what have you. But they didn't want that. They wanted a king. So they didn't ask Samuel to basically be king. They said, hey, appoint us a king. And God is like, what are you doing with a king? Like, we have our own ways, our own customs of the Hebrews or the Israelites. Why take a king? It's going against, God. So he says, for they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them, according to all the works which they have done, since the day that I brought them up out of Egypt, even unto this day, wherewith they have forsaken me, and served other gods, so did they also unto thee. Now therefore hearken unto them their voice, howbeit yet protest solemnly unto them, and show them the manner of the king that shall reign over them. And Samuel told all the words of the Lord unto the people that asked him a king. And he said, this will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen, and some shall run before his chariots. And he will appoint him captains over thousands, and captains over fifties, and will set them to ear his ground, and to reap his harvest, and to make his instruments of war, and instruments of his chariots. And he will take your daughters to be confectionaries, and to be cooks, and to be bakers. And he will take your fields, and your vineyards, and your olive yards, even the best of them, and give them to his servants. And he will take the tenth of your seed, and of your vineyards, and give to his officers and to his servants. And he will take your men servants, and your maid servants, and your goodliest young men, and your asses, and put them to his work. And he will take the tenth of your sheep, and ye shall be his servants. And ye shall cry out in that day because of your king, which ye shall have chosen you, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, Nay, but we will have a king over us, that we also may be like all the other nations. Come on. And that our king may judge us, and go out before us, and fight our battles. And Samuel heard all the words of the people, and he rehearsed them in the ears of the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, Hearken unto their voice, and make them a king. And Samuel said unto the men of Israel, Go ye every man unto his city. So now we understand what's being said here. These people slick. They smart at what they doing when they writing this stuff. And it's getting people to understand, one, the Bible is clearly telling you that kings are wrong. Plain and simple. Kings are not good. This is what they do. And basically when you look at kings, this is what they do. He's trying to separate themselves from the destruction, or I should say the wrongdoing that they're involved in. As far as we know, the rulers are kings, royal people. And it's trying to make you believe that if you are just a holy people and outside of these kingdoms, this is the way to go. This is the way it's supposed to be. But the people are basically asking for kingdoms. The people are getting what they want. You know, you don't want to be holy good people. You want to be ruled by people. And you got to think about being born into a civilization that has a king and you never asking for this king to be here. It's something that was done before you was born, but it's not something that you truly understand, nor do you have the power to stop, but it's trying to justify the king's position and justify the fact that you have all these kings and rulers that are doing wrong to the people, but it's basically the people's fault. They basically, if you accept what's being said here in the book, then you are basically, you are letting them out of the wrongdoing that they have been doing as kings and rulers in many different countries. So by the Bible saying that, kings is wrong and this is what they do, and we see in real life this stuff is happening, this is what these kings do, and they basically take the kids and put them in militaries, and the best bakers and the best cooks basically work in the palace and everything like that. And they basically use the people for their gain. So God is basically saying, you don't want a king. This is what's going to happen to you. And the civilization is saying, we don't care. We'll take it. Now it's important for you to understand what God is saying here. He's saying, okay, y'all want to disobey me. Y'all want a king. He's telling Samuel, okay, appoint them a king. Now, it's almost giving you a hint that something is going to go wrong, which we already know it will, but it's making it as if God is basically punishing the Hebrews for making this decision. But again, if you accept that, then you're accepting the fact, you're letting it slide that we had all these bad kings before, and God let it exist. And, the people let it exist. It's trying to make it as if the people was wrong for selecting the king and not God. So now we see what will later take place, where you have the replacement of kings and rulers with governments, with systems. And this is basically how they can hide. See, now, if something goes wrong, if we had a king, point the finger at the king. He did it. It's the king's fault. The king makes the decisions and the choices. But by you saying they are a monarchy, they basically represent the country or the face of the country or what have you. They're not really running things. A government is running things, and a government is basically for the people, by the people, and the people control this, and your votes control that. This way, the monarchy, the true ruling power, can hide behind the government and say it's not our fault. Well, y'all elected him. Well, y'all chose that. You didn't vote for this. So this is the reason why this stuff is happening. It's the same system we see today. Everything is being blamed on actions of people, and no blame is really going to the people who's causing this problem. So the government can say, well, it's a budget problem. If y'all want to fix it, y'all got to, pay more taxes. And then people can say, well, we don't want to pay more taxes, so it is what it is. Figure out another way to fix it. So, we see how it goes. It's a rat race. It's all a trick and ring around the rosies and a bunch of crap. But biblically, in the Bible, they're trying to justify it as, these people are wrong and kings are wrong and y'all should never accept them in the first place. And we're going to take ourselves out of the equation of, being for kings and say that biblically, spiritually, we were not for kings ever. And, this is what's going to happen, in regards to you guys taking the king at this particular time, of course, for the Hebrews, because we know not all kings was bad. So what basically ends up happening, to skip a lot of reading, Samuel appoints Saul. Saul is appointed as king, and the people love Saul. People like Saul in the beginning, but Saul begins to basically disobey all the rules. Go figure. He disobeys the laws of God and start doing stuff his own way. And, he basically tries to rush into war by performing a war ritual sacrifice without the aid of the priest. He basically frees Amalekites in a war when God tell him basically to kill all the Amalekites, don't save nobody alive, and he spares some. So, and it says here in 1 Samuel chapter 15, Samuel also said unto Saul, the Lord sent me to anoint thee to be king over his people, over Israel. Now therefore hearken thou unto the voice of the words of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, I remember that which Amalek did to Israel, how he laid wait for him in the way when he came up from Egypt. Now go and smite Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and ass. Note that verse, 1 Samuel 15:3. Infant and suckling. Again, I try to get people to see these points, as I talked about before, how we can clearly show that, kill infants. They don't fit in the psyche of what the Christians talk about as their all loving, caring God. To kill an infant, a suckling, what is the point of that? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit. So I like to get people to make notes and to really write this stuff down. So when you're explaining the truth about the Bible, when you're proving your point, you have these verses to show, to get people with any kind of common sense and compassion to be like, no, I can't really follow that. I can't believe there must be more to it than to understand that this God that's about love, peace, and mercy would, authorize the killing of infants and sucklings or what have you. It's just crazy when you get into the understanding of it. It doesn't make sense and fit with what we are told God is supposed to be. So basically, God and Samuel can see clearly that, Saul might not work out. So we need to find somebody, put him on standby. So basically, David is anointed and, becomes basically one of the anointed of God. And he's basically being prepared and ready to, eventually be king. So he's anointed. Meanwhile, this is what happens with Saul. It says on chapter 16, verse 13, to start here, then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brethren, and the Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day forward. So Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. But the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord troubled him. Think about that. But the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord troubled him. The Lord has evil spirits? Think about this. And Saul's servant said unto him, Behold, now an evil spirit from God troubleth thee. Let our Lord now command thy servant, which are before thee, to seek out a man who is a cunning player on a harp. And it shall come to pass, when the evil spirit from God is upon thee, that he shall play with his hand, and thou shalt be well. And Saul said unto this servant, Provide me now a man that can play well, and bring him to me. Remember all this. This is important. Then answered one of the servants and said, Behold, I have seen a son of Jesse, the Bethlehemite, that is cunning in playing, and a mighty valiant man, and a man of war, and prudent in matters, and a comely person, and the Lord is with him. Wherefore Saul sent messengers unto Jesse and said, Send me David, thy son, which is with the sheep. And Jesse took an ass laden with bread, and a bottle of wine, and a kid, and sent them by David his son unto Saul. So you have here established that Saul knows who David is, know who David's father is. Some of you know what I'm talking about. We'll get to that part. And it says, and David came to Saul. He met Saul, understand this, and stood before him, and he loved him greatly, and he became his armor bearer. And Saul sent to Jesse, saying, Let David, I pray thee, stand before me, for he hath found favor in my sight. Understand, you have it here. Saul, knowing who David is, knowing who his father is. It's important. And it came to pass, when the evil spirit from God was upon Saul, that David took an harp and played with his hand. So Saul was refreshed and was well, and the evil spirit departed from him. And you got to mark these verses down again. God having evil spirits come from him to go into other people. What does it talk about here? Clear as day, as I said before. Same being God and Satan. If God created Satan and Satan is evil, if God created everything, then he created evil. Plain and simple. So for him to be using evil to, get his way or what have you, you got to think about this stuff. So now this is basically where the story of David and Goliath comes in. You guys know the story. And, basically you have the Philistines, in power, what have you. And the Philistines have a champion. That champion would be Goliath, who's supposedly 9 foot tall, whatever, you heard. Big dude. So, they go out to fight the Philistines, and of course, getting their butt kicked. David comes, and David's like, take on this dude. And they try to offer him the armor to put on, and, everything else, some weapons. And David is like, no, I'm cool. I don't need nothing. I got my slingshot. So we know the story. Basically, rock, pop him in the head one time, boom, knocks him out. And then takes the sword and chops off his head. So David takes the head back to Jerusalem to let people know, hey, this is what I've done. Chop the boy head off, beat the giant, or what have you. And of course, Saul sees this, and he's basically jealous. But there's a crazy part about this whole thing. So we read, start at 54. And it says, And David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem. But he put his armor in his tent. And when Saul saw David go forth against the Philistine, he said unto Abner, the captain of the host, Abner, whose son is this youth? And Abner said, As thy soul liveth, O king, I cannot tell. And the king said, Inquire thou whose son the stripling is. And as David returned from the slaughtering of the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul with the head of the Philistine in his hand. And Saul said unto him, Whose son art thou, thou young man? And David answered, I am the son of thy servant Jesse, the Bethlehemite. Now that's one of the many issues with the Bible that people get into. One, as I said before, we just read the whole part in the book where you have clear as day Saul knowing Jesse, knowing his son is David. They meet, they talk, and, it's on. Like, they know each other. How is it you get to this point in the book and he don't even know who David is? There's no explanation to that. You have a lot of scholars who look at this and it's like, well, the writer messed up somewhere, but it's put there in the book and it's weird, which we'll get into. But how does he not know? When we just read that he met him, like, why would he even put that in there? It don't make sense. It's crazy. So basically what happens next is, Saul takes in David, basically say, forget your parents, you're going to come live with me. Saul and, David and Saul's son, Jonathan, becomes like close friends, like best friends. And, they do a lot together, what have you. They become real close. But, it's important for you to look at what's taking place with Saul and how he has his eye on what David is doing. So we're saying here, 18:6, and it came to pass as they came, when David was returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, that the woman came out of all cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet King Saul, with tabrets, with joy, and with instruments of music. And the woman answered one another as they played, and said, Saul hath slain his thousands, but David his 10,000s. And Saul was very wroth, and the saying displeased him. And he said, they have ascribed unto David 10,000, and to me they have ascribed but thousands. And what can he have more but the kingdom? And Saul eyed David from that day and forward. And it came to pass on the morrow that the evil spirit from God has the evil spirit, people, came upon Saul, and he prophesied in the midst of the house, and David played with his hand as at other times, and there was a javelin in Saul's hand. And Saul cast the javelin, for he said, I will smite David even to the wall with it. And David avoided out of his presence twice. So he tried to kill him twice with that javelin, and David avoided it twice. And Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him and was departed from Saul. Therefore Saul removed him from him and made him his captain over 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people. So basically what happens, you have, Saul sending David out on these suicide missions, hoping that David would get killed. But every time, David goes on a mission, he ends up winning. So Saul is like, you know what, man, forget all this crap. I'm just going to kill this dude. So he basically send men out to go get David, so he could bring him back to Saul and basically kill David. But, the people like David, they know he's a good man. So they basically, he's warned, he's helped, and he basically flees. So he flees and he basically ends up putting together his own little army of people who don't really like Saul, or don't like, they're in poverty or what have you. They don't like the way things are being run. So they put together an army. David basically goes out and they basically defeat this army of Philistines that's basically enslaving and oppressing the Keilah tribe. So Saul hears about this, and he basically goes out to where David is, where the Keilah tribe is, to basically track him down. So, David finds out that Saul is coming, and he basically, prays to God and say, hey, tell me what's going to happen. Is this tribe going to sell us out to Saul, or are they going to turn us over? And God says, yeah, if Saul comes and you still there, the people will give you up. So they were like, okay, cool, we out. So David and gets his army, and they basically leave and go out into the wilderness. Saul follows them out into the wilderness. So what happens is, he follows them out there, and David has a chance to kill Saul. Saul taking a pee, taking a leak. David basically has a chance to kill him. He doesn't. Instead, he cuts off a piece of his garment, just to show him that I could have killed you, but I didn't. I had a knife to cut off your garment. It's cool. He says he don't want to kill an anointed man of God. So he basically, lets it slide. And he pleads to Saul. He says, Saul, cool out. Trying to kill me for what? What's going on? You put me here. You did this. Why are you trying to kill me? And Saul basically tells him, well, I know you're going to eventually become the king. You're going to eventually run Israel. You're going to become the king. All I want is for you not to destroy my name and my house. And David basically agrees, and they have that agreement, and, you know, they go about their separate ways. So now, chapter 25, Samuel dies, and Saul basically still tries to kill David. He gets some men, follows them back out to the wilderness, and they go out there and they set up camp. Now, David is smart. He sends spies out there to go figure out, you know, where is Saul at? You know, where is he sleeping at? Where is his tent? So while Saul is asleep in his tent, David basically goes in there and takes his javelin, you know, his little spear. And again, he could have killed Saul, had a chance to kill him, but didn't. And he basically again, he pleads with Saul and says, Saul, I mean, what are you doing? Don't we had an understanding here? What are you still trying to kill me? What's going on? So, you know, Saul basically, you know, apologizes again and goes back to his kingdom and, you know, chills. But also still understand, you know, the whole time you got all this stuff going on, you know, with the Philistines and with Saul and with David. David and his army are still going out and conquering territories. They're still going out and killing people and killing the Amorites and the Perizzites and what have you. They still out there killing and basically following the plan of giving the people, the chosen people, the promised land. So he's out doing what he's supposed to do. And Saul is out basically trying to kill him, and at the same time trying to basically do what he's supposed to do. But, you know, it's crazy when you look at it in the context of you have this supposedly good man, you know, being saved in the Bible, you know, from our point of view. And he's out doing evil, out killing people. And when you read, you'll see he's out killing babies and everything. And, you know, he's obliterating everybody. This is what David is doing to his men. They're out killing. So it's weird for him to plead to Saul about, you know, being anointed of God and everything like that, or, you know, just having the understanding that what you're trying to do is wrong, but still having the stomach to go out and kill babies. You know, it's all weird stuff when you look at the whole thing. But what basically ended up happening, Saul, you know, still crazy, still want to kill David. So he basically is upset because he's trying to, you know, talk to God and ask God questions or what have you. God is not responding to none of his prayer or sending anybody out there to talk to Saul at all. He basically abandoned him. So Saul gets desperate and he basically seeks out a witch. Saul wants to know, you know, what he's trying to ask God basically is it okay to go attack the Philistines? Are we going to win this war? Are you going to be with us? So he needs answers. So he go and gets a witch who basically, you know, have control of familiar spirits. We understand about that. And, you know, he asks her to summon the spirit of Samuel, which is weird that, you know, this is done. So Samuel comes and he basically tells Saul, well, you know, the reason why God is not with you and not answering you is because of what you're doing. You're disobeying the laws, basically trying to kill David. You know, how would you think you would get, you know, God's protection when you are not following or doing what you're supposed to be doing? So, you know, Samuel basically tells Saul that, you know, you and your sons are going to be joining me soon. Plain and simple. So, better chill out. And that's basically what's going to end up happening. So, you have David and his men go out and defeat the Amalekites. Saul takes his sons and his men and they go out and attack the Philistines, and they are basically wiped out. Now, Saul is not killed by the Philistines. He asks his armor bearer to basically kill him. You know, he says, kill me. And the armor bearer's like, no, I'm not going to kill you. And Saul basically, you know, throws himself onto his sword and he kills himself. Again, you know, being a critical thinker is one of those things you got to ask yourself is, how is it that this witch is able to summon the spirit of supposedly a prophet like Samuel?